My name is Emma Carter, and I'm 33 years old. Until 5 years ago, I believed my father loved my older brother more than he ever loved me. At least, that's what everyone in my family wanted me to believe. My brother, Ryan, was always treated like the future of the family. Every achievement of his was celebrated. Every mistake was forgiven. I, on the other hand, was expected to stay quiet, work hard, and never ask for anything. When my father passed away after a short battle with cancer, our family gathered at his attorney's office for the reading of his will. My mother looked calm, almost confident, while Ryan wore the smile of someone who already knew he had won. I sat quietly, still grieving the man who had taught me the value of honesty and perseverance. The attorney began reading. Ryan inherited my father's investment portfolio, the luxury apartment in Manhattan, and his shares in the family business. My mother nodded proudly, as if everything had gone exactly as it should. Then the attorney reached the final page. To my daughter, Emma Carter, I leave the property known as Willow Creek Farm, including all structures and surrounding land. The room fell silent for only a second before my mother laughed. That old place, she scoffed. It's nothing but broken buildings and weeds. Ryan smirked. Looks like Dad left you a lifetime of hard work instead of real wealth. The attorney slid an old brass key across the table along with the deed. I picked them up without saying a word. Before my father died, he had held my hand and whispered something I didn't fully understand. Don't judge your inheritance by what everyone else sees. As I walked out of the office with that weathered key in my pocket, I made one quiet promise to myself. Before deciding whether my father had abandoned me, I would visit Willow Creek Farm and discover why he believed it was worth leaving me at all. The next morning, I drove 3 hours to Willow Creek Farm with the old brass key resting on the passenger seat beside me. Every mile gave me more time to wonder if my mother and Ryan had been right. Maybe my father had simply run out of things worth leaving me. When I finally reached the property, my heart sank. The farmhouse leaned slightly to one side. The barn roof had partially collapsed. Rusted fences disappeared into waist-high weeds, and the old orchard looked forgotten after years without care. It wasn't just neglected, it looked abandoned by time itself. For a moment, I considered turning around. Then I remembered my father's words. Don't judge your inheritance by what everyone else sees. Instead of walking away, I unlocked the front door. Inside, the house was dusty, but solid. Beneath the dirt, I noticed handcrafted woodwork, original stone fireplaces, and wide windows overlooking rolling hills that stretched farther than I could see. The land wasn't ugly. It had simply been forgotten. That evening, I stayed in a small motel nearby and spent hours researching rural development, agrorism, and organic farming. Over the following months, I poured every dollar I had into restoring the property. I worked 7 days a week, painted walls myself, repaired fences, planted new orchards, and learned skills I never imagined I'd need. The first year was brutal. There were weeks when I questioned every decision I'd made. But little by little, Willow Creek Farm began to change. The restored farmhouse welcomed weekend guests. The orchard produced its first profitable harvest. Local chefs started buying fresh produce, and couples booked the property for intimate weddings surrounded by the countryside. By the 5th year, what everyone had dismissed as worthless had become one of the region's most sought-after destinations. Then, one quiet Tuesday morning, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed a name I hadn't seen in years. Mom, I stared at my phone for several seconds before answering. Hello. My mother's voice sounded strangely warm. Emma, it's been far too long. Your brother and I were thinking about you. We'd love to come see the farm this weekend. 5 years without a single visit. Now they wanted to see me. I agreed. Saturday morning, a black pickup truck rolled slowly through the front gate. Ryan stepped out first, wearing designer sunglasses and the same confident smile he had worn the day our father's was red. My mother followed, carrying a bouquet of flowers as though nothing had ever happened. It's beautiful, she whispered as she looked around. The once abandoned farm had become something entirely different. The restored farmhouse overlooked vineyards stretching across the hills. Guests relaxed on the patios of luxury cottages. A farm-to-table restaurant buzzed with reservations, while employees prepared for an afternoon wedding beneath a white oak tree wrapped in lights. Ryan removed his sunglasses, clearly surprised. "I didn't expect all this," he admitted. I smiled politely. "Welcome to Willow Creek Farm." For nearly 2 hours, I gave them the same tour I gave investors and business partners. They asked about the vineyard, the wedding venue, the restaurant, and the orchard. Every answer seemed to make Ryan quieter. Every new building seemed to erase the confidence he had arrived with. When the tour ended, we sat on the porch overlooking the property. My mother folded her hands and looked directly at me. "Emma," she said calmly, "your father would have wanted this to stay in the family." "It is in the family," I replied. She shook her head. "That's not what I mean. Your brother should be running this now. You've proven what can be built here. It's time to transfer the property to him so the family legacy can continue." Ryan didn't object. He simply nodded, as though the decision had already been made. I looked from one face to the other and finally understood why they had come. They hadn't returned because they were proud of me. They had returned because they believed my success belonged to them. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. Instead, I excused myself and walked into the old farmhouse. A few minutes later, I returned carrying a worn leather folder that had belonged to my father. I placed it gently on the porch table and slid several documents toward my mother and Ryan. "You should read these first." Ryan skimmed the first page before his expression changed. "This can't be right." "It is," I replied. Years before his death, my father had transferred Willow Creek Farm into a protected legal trust. I was the sole beneficiary, the sole manager, and the only person with the authority to sell, transfer, or mortgage the property. No family member could challenge it without my written consent. My mother looked stunned. But why would he do that? I opened the final envelope inside the folder. It was a handwritten letter addressed only to me. "Emma, if you're reading this, you've already discovered what I hoped you would. Wealth can be inherited, but character cannot. I knew this land looked worthless to everyone else. That's exactly why I left it to you. You would see opportunity where others saw ruin." Tears filled my eyes as I folded the letter. Ryan pushed the papers away in frustration. "So that's it." I met his gaze without anger. "That's it." For the first time since arriving, neither of them had another argument. They stood, walked back to their truck in complete silence, and drove away with nothing except the realization that my father had seen the future long before any of us did. The months that followed changed our lives in completely different ways. Ryan tried to expand the family business using the investments my father had left him, but one bad decision followed another. Risky partnerships collapsed, the stock market turned against him, and within 2 years he had sold the Manhattan apartment to cover mounting debts. The fortune he had inherited disappeared far faster than anyone expected. Meanwhile, Willow Creek Farm continued to grow. We expanded the vineyard, added new guest cottages, and hired more people from nearby towns. I launched a scholarship for local students interested in agriculture and entrepreneurship, hoping someone else might find opportunity where others only saw limitations. Seeing young people build their own futures became just as rewarding as watching the business succeed. One quiet evening, I stood on the same porch where my mother and Ryan had demanded everything I had built. The sun was setting behind the hills, painting the vineyards in shades of gold. I reached into my pocket and wrapped my fingers around the old brass key my father had left me. It no longer felt like the key to an abandoned farm. It was the key to a life he believed I could create for myself. Looking across the land, I finally understood his last lesson. People will always chase the fortune they can see, but the greatest inheritance is the chance to build something no one can ever take away. And that was worth far more than anything my family had tried to claim.